Welcome back, friends. Today we're talking about why we became flight attendants, where we started in aviation.
Ever wondered what your flight attendants are really talking about behind the galley curtain?
Welcome to Two Guys on a Plane, your go-to podcast for an insider look at flight attendant life.
We're your hosts, Rich and Drew, and we're here to tell you what really goes on at 35,000 feet.
So sit back, relax, we're ready for takeoff.
Today's episode, we're going to dive into why Andrew and I became flight attendants in the first place. Everybody has their story to share. As you guys know, with our Flight Attendant Friday series that we do each week, we feature flight attendants from all around the world sharing their stories about why they became flight attendants, why they started in aviation, and why they love flying. We figured what better way to kick off our podcast than with a little bit of behind why Andrew and I became flight attendants in the first place. So, Andrew, what first drew you to flying? What first made you apply to be a flight attendant in the first place?
Oh my gosh, you're going to make me go that far this early in the day?
Yeah, I am.
You're going to make me roll back that far today.
You've had coffee. You can.
I have had coffee. You're right. Okay. Well, I was probably a junior in college. I was home on summer break and really just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with life. I wasn't really feeling the major that I had picked, and I was home on summer break and I was really trying to figure out, should I go back to college? What should I really do with my life? And my brother called me, and I'm going to give away my age here. But my brother called me and was like, I found this ad in a newspaper and I think this would be a really fun job. And
newspaper ads?
Yes, it was a newspaper ad.
Hilarious.
So yeah. I sat down and thought about it, and it was real quick. Like, it was, the newspaper ad was for like, it was a Monday, and the application process was for like Friday. Mm-hmm. I was young. I was like 19 or 20 at the time, I think. And my parents were out of town, and I was really torn on what to do because it sounded like a fun summer job. But mm-hmm. What if it was more than that? I didn't really know anything about aviation. All I know that I was would have to be able to commit to 6 weeks worth of training based on what this newspaper ad said, and I was like, oh my god, this is a big commitment. So
and unpaid training too. A lot of people don't.
Well, I didn't even know that. We haven't even gotten
that far yet.
I just
was
a
lot of people
like
don't know that though.
Just going to an interview. Like, it was an open call for an interview. So I called a trusted friend at the time, and because my parents were out of town, and I was like, what should I do? Like, do I drive to Nashville and take this chance, or do I don't even know what to do. Thankfully, the friend gave me some really good advice, and I ended up in a car on my way to Nashville to go to an interview for a flight attendant job.
That's cool. I mean, I love that story. I feel like a lot of flight attendants out there kind of got to this point in life where they're like, okay, now what? Like, what am I doing with my life? And it's like, a lot of people think, oh, maybe this will be a fun summer gig. Maybe this will be a year or two thing where I go see as many places as I can in the world and then kind of move on with my life. And then on the flip side, you've got people who are lifers from the get-go, and they are staying in aviation.
Yeah, from the interview process, I had no idea. I thought it would be a fun summer job. I didn't know that training was gonna encompass my whole summer. So yeah, that is kind of how I got started. It was really, really by chance, because I was just kind of struggling to figure out whether to go to college or not. What about you? Where did you start?
Where did I start? Where was I at in life? Let me take it back. It wasn't a newspaper ad. That's not a dig. It might be a little bit, but I was working for a nonprofit at the time, and the work I was doing was so rewarding and so fulfilling. You know, I just felt like every day I was kind of impacting people's lives, but at the same time, I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. I was stressed out. I was working. I was always answering emails. I was thinking about work even when I wasn't at work. I'd call out sick and I'd still be thinking about work or answering emails. And I couldn't even pay my bills at that time too. And I just was like, there's got to be more to life than this. Like, I wanted to work with people. I knew that, but I wanted a job where I felt like, you know, I could close my mind at the end of the day from work and not have to think about it. And so I remember I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I was sitting on my couch. I had a roommate, and he wasn't home at the time. I think he was out with friends. And I'm sitting there, I'm drinking wine. I'm just Sunday. Hey,
not
now.
a dig. I'm just saying no.
I mean, I deserve that after the newspaper comment, so it's totally fine. But I'm sitting there having a couple glasses of wine, and I'm just, the Sunday scaries that I think a lot of 9 to 5 people relate to, where it's like, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And so I started Googling like dream jobs that people have. And I mean, some of the things that came up were like insane. It was like scuba diving instructor, and I was like, I can barely swim, so
Wait, you don't want to be a scuba diver instructor?
I can't swim, Andrew. Not well, anyway.
Yes, you can.
I can like doggy paddle. But yeah, so I mean, I was like, that's not going to work. And flight attendant was one of the things that popped up, and I'd known a couple flight attendants here and there. Always thought it was an interesting job, but never really saw myself doing that. I think, kind of like the general public, I thought, is this just like serving drinks in the sky? I don't know if that's for me. Come to find out, it's way deeper than that, way more than that, way more intense than that. But I applied that night on a whim, and I had a few glasses of wine. I just submitted my resume. It was a very simple, like, I Googled who was hiring. There was like 3 or 4 airlines at the time. Uploaded my resume and a like little cover letter that I edited slightly, and honestly just kind of didn't think much about it. It was almost like in that moment, it was just my like, get me through my Sunday scaries. I'll apply for a fun job to make myself feel better and not think twice about it. Cut to Tuesday of that week. 2 days later, I get a phone call, and I was like, what is happening? And I jumped out of my office. My boss was there, and Mondays and Tuesdays were like our busiest days. And I remember jumping out into the courtyard at work and being like, hey, yeah, I have time to chat. She's like, great, we want to interview for the flight attendant job. And I was like, what? Like, you know that meme where the face is like, the what? That was my face in that moment. And so we had like a 30-minute phone interview right there on the spot. And then she's like, great, we'll fly you in for an in-person interview, and we'll go from there. And I didn't even know what I'd signed up for. I hadn't thought much about it. I hadn't gone deep diving into what that would look like. I just kind of ran with it at that point. But little did I know what the interview and training process was even going to look like.
What's funny to me is how different the experiences are, because you obviously applied online. I answered we talked about a newspaper ad.
Yeah, you are the one bringing it up this time.
I am, yes. But that's funny to me because my interview process, I know you just talked about the phone interview. That's all you got to. But my interview process was wild because I literally went to a hotel in Nashville, filled out a paper application with a 10-year like background work history, which I didn't have.
Right. Like I barely have 10 years.
Right. I did not have 10 years, but they make you go back through your whole work history or 10 years, whatever it is. So I had to like figure all of that out. No cell phone or anything. So all by memory, was doing the very best I could, hoping that I didn't lie on this application in any way, shape, form. Because I didn't want to. Correct. Yeah. I wouldn't have meant to, but it's not like I had my cell phone and to like Google up to remember my work history.
Oh my God, we rely
so I'm sitting there being so nervous, trying to make sure that I get my full work history right and all of my education and all of that's down right. And then it was like 4 basic questions that they asked. It wasn't anything crazy at all. Like the whole room, the first part of the interview was them explaining what the job was. And if that was something that we felt like we wanted to do, we could stay in the room. If we didn't stay in the room, then if we didn't think that was something that we were able to do, then we could excuse ourselves from the rest of the interview. Okay. Then there was like an introduction, because they want to know how you speak in public, so you had to like get up and introduce yourself, and based on how you spoke, they dismissed a whole bunch of people from that. And then they made you come down and like read a part of the demo, and if you could do that, then they either offered you a position or didn't. So it was like 3 to 4 questions. The whole interview took, it was a couple hours, but I knew right on the spot at the end of the interview that I was getting a job, because hadn't been dismissed from the room yet.
Right.
There was no phone interview. There was no anything like that. I went
career fair at a hotel.
Correct. I went to a hotel and to like a boardroom, and there it was. That was the fill out this application, and if you're interested in this job, here's what we need to do. Oh, and I applied for a regional airline the first time. That was what I got hired for. They were very adamant about your height too, because the plane is smaller, so you couldn't exceed a certain height. So as long as you met that height requirement, then, and you could do all the other things, then you were good to go.
And that was like local in your town, or at least somewhere where you're living. They didn't like fly you in, right?
It was a drive for me, but my brother was living in Nashville at the time, and that's where he saw the ad for it. So, I had to drive a few hours to get there, but
did they fly other people in, or
no? It was just get yourself to the hotel room. There was no, check it out. Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, there was no flying anything in. They flew us to training once we got the job, but no, the actual interview process, you had to get yourself to the hotel because you hadn't applied yet. It's not like you submitted an online application. Like you were filling out a paper when you got there. So they wouldn't have even known you were interested.
That's funny.
Yeah. Wild, right?
It's wild. Yeah, my interview process, there's definitely some similarities. So clearly they like playing the same games with people.
Oh, for sure.
Over the years.
It hasn't changed that much. Like it's gotten a little broader, I'm aware, but.
Right. But yeah, my experience was a little bit different. I remember doing that phone interview, flying in. I did fly into a couple interviews with different airlines. One said no, one said yes. And so that was a cool experience. But I remember I called out sick from my job that day. Didn't tell my boss anything.
Not recommended.
Yeah. She knows now if she's listening. 11 years later. But yeah, I showed up to the interview in person, and I had no idea that it was the process that it was. It's like several hours in person. It's just like an all day affair. You've got to look your absolute best, not a hair out of place. And you get to this room with like 75 people, at least that's how it was for me. And they, similar to you, we had an introduction. We read part of a safety demo. They explained the job and what it looks like. And then there were all these what seemed like icebreakers, and really it was just kind of us, breaking down different random scenarios that weren't really related to the flight attendant job. It was team collaboration, and I found like the little things is what they were looking for. Like I remember I was like that nerd that showed up with a folder with like extra copies of my resume and extra copies of my, cover letter and extra copies of my work history and like blank ones for other people. Like I was insane.
Right.
And I had pens and all this sort of stuff.
Because you have no idea what you're walking into.
Exactly. And so I had this girl I was sitting next to, and she was like panicked looking at me. She's like, "What is all of that?" And I was just like, "Girl, are you okay?" And she's like, "I didn't bring that." And so I'm like, it's like sliding papers across the table to her with pens, and I'm like, "Just fill it out. Like no one will notice." And all of a sudden I look up, and this woman with a clipboard is looking at me, and she's just laughing away, writing notes. And I was like, either this is really good for
really
me,
good or bad.
Really it's about to also be really bad for this girl. And similar to you, they'd come in with a clipboard, they'd read names off a list, and you didn't know if like the people leaving the room were the ones getting the job or the ones that were not getting the job. Right. And all of a sudden they whittle you down. It's like American Idol. Like people are just getting voted off each week. And suddenly it was down to, I think 4 or 5 people in my room. And it was like, "We just want to let you know, congratulations, you've got the job and you're coming to training." And I was just like, oh, this is wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your initial training like? Because that's a whole experience in itself.
Oh my God, it was wild. I had flown before, but they fly you out to training, and it's this whole big thing. I don't think anyone is ready for it ever. And there's no way to like really tell you all about it either.
Yeah, that might be a whole episode in itself.
Yeah, I think the wildest thing for me, and I think a lot of flight attendants would agree with this, I think most people think our training would be more service-minded because most of the general public see us as more service. We didn't touch on service at all. There was zero service or like customer-facing training. It was all safety and security. Now, I started in like right after 9/11. My like within a couple years of 9/11, I had started. So, I mean, that was still real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very real and very raw. And then to sit in a room and have like that played back to you and watch it and dissect it and talk about it. I mean, I think that was the hardest part. And then because it was a regional, I think the training was harder. I think it was very difficult training. They had very high standards. But I think that's because like you were alone. I mean,
Right.
I was working on a single
yeah.
flight attendant aircraft, and I was going to be working on a single flight attendant aircraft. So I think a lot of the emergency training, I think, was drilled harder.
Totally.
Because you're the only person up there.
Yeah, you don't have anyone to rely on in that situation.
Right.
So you better know your stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found it fascinating, and looking back, I mean, I think I'm lucky to have started at a regional because I think our training was very difficult.
Right.
But I think it really prepared me to be up there by myself.
Yeah, training was definitely an interesting process because, I mean, you say zero service training. I definitely remember like maybe an hour of one day.
Okay, I say zero, but like correct. It was like 30 minutes or an hour of like 6 weeks worth of training.
Maybe like that 1 hour of training where someone rolled out a beverage cart and was like, hey, look, this is a beverage cart. You get drinks off it, you give them to the people. That's it. I mean, it's so minimal, but
this drawer's Coke, this drawer's juice, this drawer's snacks, this drawer's ice, and that's our beverage card.
That's our service guidelines. Yeah. I mean, but for the most part, it's everything from fires to crashes to terrorist attacks to delivering babies in flight, medical emergencies. I mean, it's anything under the sun you could think of that might happen on an airplane is what in-flight training is actually about.
Right.
But I'm curious to know more because you started with a regional and then it was 10 years in that you switched gears to another airline?
Yeah, I think so. That sounds right.
What was that like switching it up? I mean, I'm 11 years in now, so I'm kind of at the same point where you were switching, and I can't imagine like switching airlines, going through training again. Like, what made you want to switch airlines, and what was that process like?
That process was so frustrating because I didn't know that it was actually okay. So let me roll it back a little bit. What made me decide to switch is I think that in the industry, there's this like dream of grandeur and like the larger plane, the larger routes or the longer routes you can work. Like that's everyone's dream of being a flight attendant, right?
I think passengers think that too. Like,
correct.
If you're not going to Paris or you're even a flight attendant.
Turboprops and like 20 minutes flights are not what everyone's dreaming of. You know, I think, there are movies out there about first class, Paris, international. Yeah. Like those are the things that people, so like you always have that like thought in, right. I think you always have that thought in your mind. And so I think the want to switch was that, at this point, at 10 years into being a flight attendant, clearly this is a career for me at this point, and I wanted to make it a career, and I wanted to, start making the money that, justified this career. Because, I don't think a lot of people know this, but there is a big disparity between regional and mainline pay.
Absolutely.
It's really a two-tiered system. We can have a much longer conversation about that. Any other podcast, I'm sure it will be. So I think that's what it was for me wanting to change. I think there's that dream of being on larger airplanes and making better money. And so I think it wasn't at 10 years in. I had been trying for a long time to make that switch, but I didn't realize, and I understand now after being in aviation for so long, that working for a regional actually harmed me because the main lines don't want to deplete the regional staff to hire. So they don't really hire as many regional flight attendants as they do just people off the street. So it took me a really long time to actually get to a new airline.
Right.
So it was a very frustrating process.
I can imagine.
I really thought I was a terrible flight attendant because everyone just kept saying no. And I was like, I can't be that bad at this. This has been a very long career for me.
And then to go through all that again as a new hire and new schedules and new systems.
Oh my God.
Rules.
And the first time I answered a newspaper application or newspaper ad and went to a hotel room. This time you're applying online. The interview process had gotten so much more grueling because it was like an all-day experience.
Right.
And I think your first experience is similar to my second experience, where you go in and literally everything you do is being watched. How many people you talk to? Did you talk to enough people? Did you not talk to enough people? How did you interact with those people? Are you helpful? Are you a leader? Can you follow? Like all of these things are being looked at. And I mean, those interviews are nerve wracking the second time around, because you know what they're watching for. And you're like, I'm sure you know what they're scribbling on that. On that notepad, and
it's
you're like,
worse once you know. I definitely think back on that, and I'm like kind of happy that when I went into that process, I was blind to it, because to some degree it was helpful to not really know what you were expecting, because you don't have a chance to overthink it and panic and overanalyze it. Right. And to give people context too, when you started with your second airline, we were kind of just starting our relationship as well. So, you know, that's definitely something interesting, that we're both kind of on the same timeline with your second airline and my current airline. So, yeah. So what do you love about flying? What's keeping you here after all this time? What does being a flight attendant mean to you?
There's so many wonderful things about this job that keep me here every day. It's unlike any other job. The schedules, which I'm sure we'll get into later, but like the flexibility, you just have the ability to like drop, pick up, swap, like nothing is permanent in all of this. The crews, it's ever changing. No two flights are ever alike. We don't fly with the same pilots. We don't fly with the same flight attendants. We don't fly with the same passengers. And even regionally, the passengers change from destination to destination. So like every flight is really a surprise. I mean, once you start working the routes a lot, you can figure out, what kind of person you're in for. And honestly, the travel benefits, the travel benefits are what really keep me here.
I mean, it's so cliche, but I mean, how do you pass up an opportunity to just get on an airplane whenever you want? Granted, there aren't always seats. As we know, flights are often full and you're kind of waiting and waiting and waiting, but that giving up that ability would be tough.
Oh, so hard. I literally have never not had them. I mean, I started flying when I was 20. I've not had them. I don't think I can give them up at this point.
Buying plane tickets is not for the faint of heart.
Right. What about you? What makes you stay? What do you love about flying, and what makes you stay?
I think the thing that made me stay, and I kind of knew this right from the get-go, just coming out of a stressful work environment, being micromanaged by someone who was a bit of a perfectionist, which I admired, but also was sometimes frustrated by. I think just having a job where you go to work for 3 days, you come home, and you do not have to think about it again until you go back to work. But that is my number one. And then I also just really love the flexibility of it. I mean, we're all kind of different. And again, we can talk about schedules another day, but you can fly as much as you want in the first half of the month and then take a couple weeks off. And as you get more senior, your schedule becomes more flexible. And that kind of stuff is a godsend. I mean, you've got our friends with 9 to 5 jobs who were like, oh, you have vacation? Is that why you guys are taking off this month? And we're like, no, we just planned our schedules accordingly so that we can have a week-long getaway somewhere. But yeah, between that and just the overall community of being a flight attendant, I love it. I think I knew from the get-go when strangers are taking care of you, celebrating your birthday when they barely know you, going out of their way to check on you or buy you dinner if they feel like something's going on. It's unmatched.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like sitting your head back against the jump seat and feeling the engine start to whir up. I will never not be excited when you feel that.
The thrill of aviation.
Oh, the thrill of aviation. Yeah.
It's addicting.
It's so addicting.
It really is.
It's really a wild ride, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I think I'm a lifer. I don't think I could do anything else after doing this for a decade.
I mean, I am obviously a lifer, 20 plus years. What am I going to do now?
I mean, who knows?
No, I spoiled myself too early. The thought of a 9 to 5 is the most terrifying thing in the world to me. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to do it.
Well, that's why we became flight attendants. I think that really sums it up. I know my mom, I remember when I first started flying, her friends were like, oh, so when are you going to get a real job?
I love that question.
And it's one of my favorite questions that people ask, because I really feel like this is a real job and it's better than your job. So hell yeah, I'm going to stay. Right. So yeah. But yeah, that's why we became flight attendants. Hopefully you found this interesting, and share your stories with us. Keep submitting your Flight Attendant Friday stories. We love reading them. We love sharing them. Go to twoguysonaplane.com/flight attendant Friday. Each week we feature a new flight attendant, and we'd love to hear your story next.
All right, well, I think that does it for us today. Like and subscribe to the podcast.
Join us next time for more humor, heart, and stories from the beverage cart. We'll see you next time on Two Guys on a Plane. This episode was brought to you by Staff Traveler, the #1 non-rev app. If you travel on standby tickets and are looking to make your journey easy and stress-free, check out the Staff Traveler app in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. Visit stafftraveler.com/2guys to learn more and sign up.
An Ironic Media production. Visit us at ironickmedia.com.